Hi everybody, good evening. I am back with another interesting topic that we need to learn about, especially if we are preparing for our judiciary mains, specifically for judiciary mains actually, but it will also help you in other entrance exams and as a legal professional. Today we are going to talk about Pressy Writing and we are waiting for more of you to join in before we officially begin. Till then, I would like you to know that Oliveboard has come up with really interesting judiciary courses which are very comprehensive and contain all the material that you would require for your preparation, especially if you are kind of unsure about how your strategy should be, what your plan should be, and you're trying to conserve time because you're preparing for prelims or mains that are going to happen in 2 to 3 months. So you can check out their courses on the official website. All the links are given in the description box. And if you like any of the courses, you can get flat 45% off by using the code Sanya, Sanya. That's my name. Hi everybody. The mode of interacting would be through the live chat that you can see on your desktops or your laptops or your mobile phones, wherever you're joining us from. So, if there is anything in particular that you would like to talk to me about, I'll keep looking at the chat box and I will maybe ask you some questions and would want you to respond to those questions, and you might have some doubts, so you can ask me your doubts in the chat box and I will answer them either while I'm teaching because I think it's important enough to be discussed right away, or I will wait towards the end of the session to clear your doubts. Our today's topic is Pressy Writing. Now, what is Pressy Writing? And since it's specific to the English language, we're going to stick to that. As we know, when we are preparing for judiciary, it's not just the English language. We should know Hindi also if we are going to, sit for exams in any specific language speaking state. Then we must know their local language. For example, in West Bengal, you must know Bengali. In Rajasthan, Haryana, Hindi to must hai. In other exams, in Odisha, there's Odia, and so the local language should be known if you're applying in that, if you're sitting for exams in those states. But generally English is everywhere, and specifically even if you look for only English speaking states, there are none. So there's English and Hindi, but English is everywhere. And this is one very, very significant topic. Why? Because in your judiciary mains, the questions you get direct questions on Pressy Writing, and depending on which state you are sitting for, you will get either a 20-mark question on Pressy Writing or a 40-mark question on Pressy Writing, which is equivalent to the weightage of a question on judgment writing or another specific law subject question, so where you have to write a long answer. So those questions can also be 20 marker, 40 marker. So what it tells you is that it's not just important to know the law, but you should also know how to write your answers, how to write precisely. Do you understand the language? Are you able to articulate well? Are you able to communicate whatever you're trying to communicate through writing well? Because at the end of the day, if you end up becoming a judge, or even if you go for UPSC, or you are an LLM aspirant, or you are even a law student who's becoming a lawyer, a lot of your job will be about communicating with others through your legal documents. And if you don't know how to articulate well, if you don't know how to write in a manner that is actually going to be beneficial and that is easily understandable to an average human being with average intelligence, you will not be able to succeed in your profession. And that's why it forms a very, very important role when it comes to entrance exams, higher standard entrance exams for UPSC and judiciary and even LLM when you're writing subjective answers. So, Pressy writing is a way to say the same thing in different and lesser words. So, we're going to elaborate on that today. What will we cover today? Our agenda for the day. The first thing we are going to talk about is an introduction to Pressy writing, why you need it, what it means, how to go about it, things like that. Then we are going to talk about a step by step process that you can follow. It is comprehensive, it is indicative. I'm not saying that that is the only way to do it, or this is the right way, everything else is wrong. No, I'm just going to guide you a little with what helped me, with what helped people around me in the legal profession, and they've seen results using this process. So I'm going to share that with you. You do you. So if it works for you, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. The end product should be clear. It should be concise. It should be precise. So however you reach there, whatever works for you is about you. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit on do's and don'ts to follow. So sometimes, there are very common mistakes that we see when we are trying to practice Pressy writing. And I'm going to share those common mistakes with you and just another guide of sorts to tell you what you should be doing, what you should be checking on, and what you should absolutely refrain from doing. And then towards the end of the session, we'll practice. So how we're going to practice is that I'm going to give you one paragraph that actually came in one of the judiciary exams in previous years, and we are going to convert that into Pressy writing together. So that will be towards the end. Keep interacting with me. Just write in the chat box. If you're there, say hi to me, ask your questions, whatever you think Pressy writing means, just put it in the chat box. Let's make it as interactive as possible. So, I haven't formally introduced myself, but I guess if you have been attending these lectures, you must know that I'm Sanya Arora. I'm an advocate practicing in Delhi NCR for the last over 3 years, and I have experience in teaching and taking webinars and sessions on different law subjects. And we've already covered a good number of lectures for Oliveboard. So if you just go to the Oliveboard Judiciary YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the previous lectures. We are conducting a series of lectures for the entire month, which are for free for judiciary aspirants primarily, but they will help you if you're a law student, if you're a legal professional also, because at the end of the day, the subjects are the same and the skills that we need are the same. So, to begin with, before we dive into the definition of Pressy writing, what it means, and what we should understand of it, I want you to just give a second to this particular quote that you can see on your screens. If I had more time, I'd have written a shorter letter. Now, this is a very famous quote that was spoken by Cicero. Cicero was a very famous Greek philosopher, writer, lawyer, um, and he said this. And although it doesn't really make sense at first if you're hearing it for the first time, but the essence of it is that if we want to say something or write something and we're not thinking about it properly, then we can go on writing, we can go on talking. But if we have to condense the same amount of information into, say, one or two words or one or two lines, that will require application of mind, and that will require for us to really sit down and think and then write. So that takes more time. So if I had more time, I'd have written a shorter letter. I hope it makes sense to you a little bit. You can write in the chat box if it does. So I'll just text in the chat box. Yeah, so that's me. So if it makes sense to you, and if you're there, just shoot me a hi in the chat box, okay? So, keeping that quotation in mind, let's try to understand what is Pressy writing. As we know, very famously, Shakespeare said this in Hamilton, that brevity is the soul of wit. Brevity means writing in a brief manner, in a concise, precise manner. And if we are witty, if we are smart, then we will be brief. Otherwise, we can go on forever because it requires wisdom and application of mind to be brief. So, Pressy writing essentially it comes from the term précis, which is French for precise, as you could have guessed. So, to be precise, to be concise, to know how to condense bigger paragraphs and articles and passages into one or two key sentences or key words to distill the entire message to its core. So when we actually cull out what is the core idea behind the entire passage or behind the entire article or behind the entire judgment, we are able to effectively do Pressy writing. So some things that you must keep in mind before we move forward with this topic is that when you are writing, when you are attempting or practicing Pressy writing, it's an art, first of all. So it doesn't just come overnight. You have to practice, you have to give it some time, you have to read very, very lengthy judgments, paragraphs, passages, articles, blogs, whatever it is that you can find, and then try to condense that into what you could get out of it, distill that to its core. So how you do that is something that comes with practice, and some tips and tricks will be shared with you today. But whatever you do, remember that your Pressy writing should not change the meaning of the entire passage. It should not change the meaning of what that article or what that judgment is actually trying to tell you. If it changes the meaning, it is not Pressy writing. You are supposed to carry the keywords of that passage with you in your Pressy writing. Don't skip over things that are important. Don't repeat things that are not important. And a lot of the times when we are writing, we don't realize this. When we are reading judgments, also, when we are reading a lot of paragraphs and articles, we see that the same idea is being circulated in the entire passage in different words. And we have to identify that idea and put that into one sentence or two sentence. Some rules are to be followed that we'll discuss in the following slides. But the idea behind it is that you are supposed to be able to be clear in your understanding of what you're reading and what you're trying to convey to your reader. The reason why all of these entrances have Pressy writing as your question, as your specific point of examination, where they're going to judge you on the basis of how well you do on this, is because they want to see how clear your thought process is, if you are able to identify what is important or not, and if you are able to communicate that with a larger audience. And the way to do that is through Pressy writing. When we read something and write it in our own words, we apply our mind and we understand it. We internalize the information and then convert it into a simple form. And this entire exercise is not just to write clearly, it's to understand, interpret what we've read clearly. It's very helpful when you're drafting legal documents. It's very helpful when you're trying to understand judgments. It is very, very helpful when you are trying to understand any concept whatsoever, because once you write it in your own words, you remember it. So what are the steps to follow? The very first thing that you have to do when you are practicing Pressy writing is to read, reread, reread whatever you have to condense. So the more number of times you read it, the more you'll be able to interpret it better. So in your first reading, you can get a bare idea of what it's all about. In your second reading, you can delve deep and see if you have covered all the points, if all the keywords are there in your mind, and then you start making your own notes. Then you compartmentalize. So how you compartmentalize is you pull out the broad ideas, and then you start making notes of what are the lines and what are the paragraphs that talk about those broad ideas, and you put them in those boxes. You can do it either in your mind or you can do it on the rough sheet, but you should compartmentalize and you should follow the one third rule. Now, what is the one third rule? Whatever is the size of the main passage, main article that you're reading, that you have to condense using Pressy writing, you have to ensure that your Pressy writing is one third of the entire article. So, for example, if the entire article has around 1,000 words, then your Pressy writing, it should condense all of that into 330 words or so. So how to do that is something again that comes with practice, and we'll see eventually in the following slides the different the deeper intention and the deeper meaning of every step. But these are the three broad steps, and then we'll start to identify what we do before, what we do during, and what we do after. So you read, you compartmentalize, and you make sure that you are following the one third rule. So your final end product should be one third of what the original article or passage is all about. These are broad steps again. So, first, before reading or viewing the text, try to learn more about the topic by reviewing similar ideas. This will help you become familiar with vocabulary and ideas around the topic. Now, this is something that you have to do when you're practicing. Of course, you can't do it when you are sitting for your exams and actually have to perform Pressy writing. But while you are still preparing for your exams, you can adopt this idea that when you are reading articles and passages and judgments, you are also reading ancillary articles that explain those particular judgments or those particular passages to you. Why? Because it will help you enhance your vocabulary and ideas around the topic. But remember, in your Pressy writing, you are not supposed to give your own ideas or your opinions. You have to write the same thing in different and in different and lesser words. So you have to remember that rule. You cannot add something on your own whims and fancies. But you should have a good vocabulary. You should have an idea about what is being talked about. And the only way to do that is to read a lot. Then you read and reread the passage and then determine the big picture of what it means. Try to figure out the main idea and supporting details from the text. For example, there is a huge judgment that you are reading. It's 800, 900 pages long, and it's all about LGBTQI plus rights. So you will first identify, by reading the entire judgment, you'll identify what is the core idea behind that judgment or behind that article. What is it trying to say? LGBTQI rights are also very broad. Which particular right are they talking about? Right to live, right to right to good health, right to move, right to marry another person from the same sex. What right are you talking about? So when you read it and reread it, you'll be able to identify just exactly what is being talked about and discussed. And the entire article judgment passage usually revolves around one or two broad ideas only. So try to figure out the main idea and supporting details. So if you're saying that it's about rights of LGBTQI plus people to marry anybody from the same sex, then what are the lines, what are the statements, what are the examples from the passage that you can cull out to support that main idea? So, that's a mental exercise that you should do. Then, once you've done that, you reflect on your comprehension by asking yourself, what does this mean? When necessary, go back and reread the text from the beginning to end. Look up unfamiliar words in a dictionary to help you understand what those words mean. Now, this practice is what I follow, and it has helped me immensely in my drafting, in my understanding, in my remembering different words and difficult words. Is that whenever I come across an unfamiliar word, I will write down what it means and have that document with me. I usually use Google Docs, so I can keep updating that list. And I keep going back to that list every now and then, just so in my subconscious I remember those words. So sometimes I might not remember the exact definition, but I'll be able to tell you just exactly, okay, this word is something related to that, it may mean something around that. So when you come across the word, say somna, it's related to sleeping. When you are talking about libra, it's related to liberty. And so those stems, those endings, those tail words, you remember the core of those words, and then you're able to identify, okay, so this entire word may mean this. So how to do that is very simple, it's very basic. Just whenever you come across an unfamiliar word, you note it down, you write down the meaning, you remember it. Good vocabulary, good grammar is very important for your Pressy writing, for your judiciary exams, for UPSC exams, for any answer writing exercise that you're coming across for your drafting as a legal professional. You must have good vocabulary, not Shashi Tharoor kind of vocabulary, but decent enough that you're able to make sense of what is being said to you. And when you ask yourself these questions, okay, so what does this mean? And how do I understand this? I need to read something else about this to understand it better. So when they're talking about psychoanalysis of the parents of LGBTQI plus community, then you have to understand what is psychoanalysis, what do they mean by this, why do they need to do this. So you read allied articles to make more sense of it. This is not to say that you can copy ideas from other articles or something like that. Do not plagiarize, don't copy anybody anything. Not just because it's a bad practice, but also because it stunts your growth. You're not able to apply your mind, and you're not able to use analytical thinking and reasoning, and that will be very, very visible in your entrances, in your presentation of whatever you're trying to do. So don't do that. But remember that you need to understand it. The only way you can condense it, to write it in a shorter manner, in a precise, concise, beautiful manner, is when you have clarity. So your writing will have to reflect clarity, and that will come through understanding, and you'll have to understand it yourself. So however you can understand it, then maintain a list of unfamiliar words. Then the next step is try paraphrasing the text aloud before writing. So you can, when you're just starting out to learn how to do Pressy writing, you can try this out. But if you've done it a couple of times and you know the hang of you've gotten the hang of it, you don't need to do this. So try to paraphrase it. Again, paraphrasing means the same thing, that you are saying the same thing, you are writing the same thing in different words. You're not giving your analysis, you're not giving your conclusions, you're not giving your opinions, you're just writing the same thing in different and simpler words and lesser words. So before you write it, say it out loud. Then explain the main idea of the text to a partner or to your own self. Just explain it once orally, verbally, to yourself or to somebody that you're studying with or talking to. And then you paraphrase the text by writing the meaning in your own words. Consider how you can change the sentence structure or voice, or rephrase the sentence in new ways. Now we'll discuss how to do that in the following slides. How to rephrase it in new ways, in also making sure that you are using lesser space, lesser word count. Compare your writing with the original to make sure that the meaning remains the same. Now this is the core. You cannot breach this rule at all. You cannot change the meaning of what is being said in that passage article while you're paraphrasing, while you are Pressy writing. Credit the initial author with a citation after your paraphrase text, and don't forget to include the source at the end of your paper. So this is if you're doing it professionally, this is for that. But if you have to do it for your exams, then you don't have to write the source, because you yourself will not know the source. They'll just give you a passage and they'll ask you to do Pressy writing on that passage. But if there are any authors, or if there are any any persons being referred to, or any papers being referred to in the main article, then make sure that you are giving them due credits in your Pressy writing also. And then finally, when in doubt, a good general rule of thumb to follow is read, think, restate in your own words. So read, then think about it, and then restate it. So these are the basic steps to follow. Now let's condense these basic steps into three parts: before, during, and after. Again, if I'm going too fast, or if there is something that you are not able to understand, or something that you would like me to clarify, you can just put that in the chat box. As you can see, I'm constantly looking at the chat box. So hi Jay Chopra, thank you for joining us. um okay, so what do we do before we start Pressy writing, or before we say that we are going to just write down whatever comes to our mind? No, you read the entire thing. Usually, the paragraphs that they give you in your exams that carry 40 marks, 30 marks, 20 marks, depending on the state, for Pressy writing, those paragraphs will be around 1000 words or 1200 words. So, not too many words. You will have to practice your reading skills also, because you'll have to understand how to read quickly. You can't spend too much time on reading. At the same time, you cannot skip any parts, because you don't know what's important, what's not important, especially not until you've read the entire thing. So read it, reread it, read it as many times as you can to get the main idea. A lot of the times when you're reading it for the first time, it will not make any sense to you, or it will not make much sense to you until and unless you're like Einstein. So, you just need to glance at it, or maybe your micro, so you get a photographic memory and you're just like done with it. You just looked at it once and it's stored in your head forever. So, until and unless you're specially gifted, in which case I'm very, very envious of you, you will have to read it again and again. And it's a daunting task. It can look very scary. And especially if you think that your English skills are not as good as they should be. So, it'll take extra effort on your end, but it really takes is practice. So, if you do it once, it'll be very difficult. You'll read it again, it won't be as difficult. Then you read it once more, then you start making sense of it. Okay, yeah, now I think I know what it is talking about. And a lot of the times in the exams, the judiciary exams, you won't get any specific judgments to paraphrase or to do Pressy writing on. You'll get basic articles on, say, capital markets, on liberty, on the political thought of liberalism, on feminism, things like that. So, social legal issues will be talked about, and you'll be asked to do Pressy writing on that. So, it's not necessary that you should know the surrounding circumstances of that article, but it is necessary for you to be able to understand it. And only then you'll be able to do the next thing, which is to identify what is important and what is not. In every writing, in every conversation, even in this session today that you've joined live and you're listening to me, your brain is constantly working. So if I'm repeating something again and again, my purpose is for it to be clear to you, because I'm not sure if I'm going too fast or if I'm going too slow. So I'm repeating it, making sure that you're getting what I'm trying to say, because I'm trying to teach here. But your brain is constantly processing it. And if you're listening to me since the beginning, you'll be able to condense and filter out things that are not important and retain things that are important. So, out of everything that I've discussed with you till now, you'll be able to come up with some key takeaways that, okay, one thing, Pressy writing needs practice. You need to read carefully, you need to be able to compartmentalize, and those, your specific subjective key takeaways you have already taken in your brain. Similarly, when you're reading something and you're trying to understand it, eventually you'll be able to identify that what is it that I can filter out, what is it that I need to keep. It will take a lot of practice, but the next step will be to identify that. Identify the important parts, identify the parts that are being repeated, and then you organize. How you organize is that you have to first of all make sure that there is some logic to what you're trying to understand or even say. There's a coherence. Coherence is one point is being connected with the other. first there is, and for example, I'm telling you about coronavirus. Nobody needs to know about it, but because it's all around us and we all are overfed with information. But let's say I'm writing something about it. Let's say you are coming from a different planet, you don't know, you haven't heard the term before. So how will I make sure that you understand what coronavirus is? First, I'll give you an introduction. After I've given you the introduction of the virus and what where it came from, I'm giving you a historical background, and then I will give you what it's doing to us today. You know, that first this happened, then this happened, then this happened. So what am I doing? I'm organizing my thoughts in a structured manner so you're able to make sense of what I want you to know. So after you've read and identified the important points, you'll organize them in a logical, coherent manner that makes sense, that are usually sequential or chronological, one after the other, trying to put forth the information very, very carefully. Now, all of this you're doing before you've actually started Pressy writing. So you're doing it in your heads, and you are maybe even making notes. uh, so then we go on to the next, which is what you have to do during. Now I'm constantly checking the chat box, and Jay, that's amazing. That's really good that you're able to organize everything. And Kunal, hi, thank you for joining us. So up until now, I hope things are clear. Again, you can put your queries in the chat box if they are not. So before you start writing, you read, you identify, you organize. Then, while you are Pressy writing, while you're doing the main part, which is that after you've understood the main idea, you're trying to write it down in your own words. Use active voice. Now, what do I mean by active voice? It's a very basic concept of English language. For example, if I say that the poor little boy was being chased down the street by the big bullies. This is a sentence. I have to convert it into active voice. How will I do that? I will say that the big bullies were chasing after the boy, the poor little boy. So when you are directly talking about the action that's being taken by the subject, then you are talking in active voice. So why am I telling you to use active voices? That it automatically reduces the word count. And you see that once you start writing, once you start practicing, you filter out the unnecessary synonyms, the unnecessary words and phrases and metaphors that beautify the entire thing or give you a visual or imagery of sorts. You filter that out. You simply state in simple words in active voice what is happening. So if in this I will say paraphrasing or Pressy writing, I instead of saying poor little boy, I can just say boy. If instead of saying the big bad bully, I can just say bully. So taking out those words, filtering out those words will not have any impact on the meaning of what the sentence is all about. So you have to remember that. Use active voice to lower the word count. Capture the idea in your writing. So, like I told you, if I'm going to write about coronavirus, if there is one big article on this, I am Pressy writing, I'm practicing Pressy writing. So, what is it that I'm talking about? Is the article about how COVID has affected small businesses? Is it about how COVID has it has highlighted the need for medical care and good governance in the country? What is it about? So I have to capture that idea in my Pressy writing. Then use simpler words. Even though your vocabulary should be good, because you should be able to understand what's written in the passage that's going to be given to you, and you can't always be sure what will be the question. In our daily lives as legal professionals, we always have Google, we have dictionaries, so we can always figure that out. But when you're sitting for exams, you're not going to be able to do that. So your vocabulary should be good. Also, because there are specific questions on English language in your entrance exams also. where they ask you what are synonyms, what are antonyms, what are homonyms, and things like that. You should have the basic idea of what are some difficult words and how to make sense of them. But when you're writing, Pressy writing, use simpler words. So, you can say, so instead of, let's say, if I want to, but that doesn't mean that my word should completely change the meaning. So, if I want to say that, it is making me delirious. So instead of using the word delirious, I can just say it is making me confused. I don't really know. I'm just very lost and confused, or very very unable to comprehend this. So use simpler words. Then after that, what you have to do is, after you've done everything, remember, before Pressy writing, you were reading, you were identifying, you were organizing. During Pressy writing, you were making sure that you're using active word, you're using simpler words, that you are able to capture the main idea. So you've taken all of that into consideration. Now, after you've done everything, it doesn't mean that you're done. You're done. That बस हो गया, किसी भी तरीके से लिख लिया, अब आगे वाले क्वेश्चन पे चलते हैं, या जो भी है, खत्म हो गई अब बात। हम हमेशा सबसे ज्यादा गलती तब करते हैं when we don't revisit what we've already done. So when we still have the chance to rectify our mistakes, we don't, because we are more than happy that we're done with the task. But that is not the way to do it, especially not when you're trying to really learn something. You're trying to upskill, you're trying to identify just exactly what are your shortcomings and how you can apply them in your daily life to improve as a professional also, if not just for entrance exams. So after you have written whatever you were supposed to write, and this is true for you writing your drafts also, before you are submitting your drafts for your senior to check or to file in court, make sure that you've restated everything that the main paragraph or the main article was all about. After you've restated everything, make sure that you are rechecking that, is there something else that you can filter out? Can you condense it even further? Are you repeating an idea? Have you given it your own biases or thoughts or interpretations or opinions anywhere? You have to make sure that you're rechecking all of that. And if you find any faults, any flaws, any discrepancies, you make sure that you are repairing them. So take the time for that. When you're preparing for your answers, when you are really even practicing Pressy writing, make sure that you're leaving out your planning your time in such a manner that you're leaving out at least 2 to 5 minutes for revision of what you've done. So your entire time should not just be about understanding it and writing it, but please spend some time on revising it as well. So you have to make sure of that. Then some do's and don'ts. We've already touched upon them briefly in what we've discussed up until now. But just to sort of put them in bullet points so you can identify what you're trying to take away from this. The do's are that you're retaining the keywords. So in legal language and legal jargon, usually, how we do it is that if let's say we're going to the courtroom and we have to say that this person, the accused person, has actually committed murder, and the opposite party, the defendant's counsel, the accused counsel, also says that, yeah, I mean, this person has committed murder, then you are ruining your entire case, because as a defendant, as an accused person's counsel, you have to remember that there's this term called alleged, allegation. So you have to make sure that you're using that term in the courtroom also, in your drafts also, because if you're not using the term alleged, you are admitting that yes, it has happened. Alleged means allegation, and you are innocent until proven guilty. So if you are losing out on these keywords in your daily, court visits, in your drafts, in your whatever you're trying to prepare, then you are essentially ruining your draft. You're ruining your presentation. You're ruining whatever you're supposed to be saying. However brief it might be, it won't make any sense because you'll be acting against yourself. Similarly, if you're talking about a breach of contract, just use the term breach of contract. Don't say that, that person did not follow that particular clause and he had promised that he will. He had also signed that he will, but he didn't do it. Use breach of contract. If you are talking about a particular political thought, and you'll see that in the example towards the end of today's session, then use that term for that political thought. Use it correctly. Use it in your Pressy writing. Don't just give it away. Don't just think it's not important. Identify those keywords and retain those keywords in your Pressy writing also. Find a way to make it brief while using those keywords. And give credits. We've already discussed this, that if you are referring to somebody who said something, somebody who wrote something, it's given in the main paragraph. You are reproducing it in your Pressy writing somehow. Then don't forget to give credits. Don't forget to say, okay, this person said this or this person wrote this. And also, do not verbatim reproduce something. Do not just rewrite what has been written in the main paragraph in the same words. That is not Pressy writing. But I guess we'll cover that in the don'ts. But for do's, another thing is that condense 3 4 lines at once. So if your paragraph will have around 10 15 lines, then take 3 lines, take 4 lines, and make sure that you are converting those 4 lines into one line. When you do that every 3 or 4 lines, you'll be able to see that you've actually reduced the word count. And then you do it, repeat the practice again with the product that you've gotten after condensing every 3 4 lines, and see if you can condense it further, if you can distill it further. Check the grammar using abbreviations, using hashtags, using just quotation marks, or using hyphens. Those things will not really work until and unless you're using them in a grammatically sound manner. So check your grammar. Know for a fact that whatever you're writing is grammatically correct. That's very important. You lose marks otherwise. Don't Okay, so the don'ts are very simple. Don't overcomplicate anything. If it's already complicated, don't overcomplicate it. Simplify it. If it's not complicated, don't use those fancy words to complicate it. Just keep it simple. Don't assume anything. Don't just if a French singer is being referred to in the paragraph, and you know a little bit about that singer, and you want to write about it, or you've already assumed what that singer would have said or done, and you're writing about it, you won't be Pressy writing, that's for sure. Don't opine. This is not an op-ed. You are not supposed to give your analysis. You're not supposed to make notes, or your own glossary of sorts of what you think about it. Do not opine. Do not add anything on your own. Don't put questions. Don't just say that, okay, so this has been written like this. What do you think? Or, you're writing in first person and you're like, I think that it means this. And then if this were to happen to you, what would you do? And things like that. Don't do that. Do not. Absolutely don't do that. So now we move on to the practice. We have the last 15 minutes left with us, and I don't see any questions in the chat box. So let's just move on with the practice. And if there are any, of course, questions or anything you'd like to discuss with me, we can always do that towards the end of the session. Now, this is one paragraph from one of the questions that actually came in previous year judiciary exams of one state, Delhi. And I've just taken out one paragraph. The entire question was about, it had around 7 paragraphs, and I've taken off one paragraph from that. And this paragraph has 88 words. So we have to read the paragraph, we have to apply everything that we have learned till now. So the very first thing that I told you was that before you Pressy write, you start to read. and understand what it's about. Identify and organize. So let's do that. So, just reading it out loud, okay? The word anarchy comes from the Greek anarchia, meaning contrary to authority or without a ruler, and was used in a derogatory sense until 1840, when it was adopted by Pierre Joseph Proudhon to describe his political and social ideology. Now, Proudhon argued that organization without government was both possible and desirable. In the evolution of political ideas, anarchism can be seen as an ultimate projection of both liberalism and socialism, and the differing stands of anarchist thought can be related to their emphasis on one or the other of these. Now, when I read it for the first time in front of you guys right now, it did not make any sense to me, honestly. But I have read this before, and I know what it's about because I've read it multiple times before. But if I were reading it for the first time, and when I actually did read it for the first time, it didn't make much sense to me. What I can cull out from this right now is that, okay, yeah, it's about anarchy. It's about the political thought of anarchism or the anarchic thought. So, anarchist thought. So, how do I go about this? First of all, I'll focus on giving it an appropriate title. This entire paragraph, if you read it again, and you should, you'll be able to understand it's telling you, first of all, the origin of where the term anarchy comes from. It also tells you about the evolution of anarchist thought, or what anarchism is all about. So, the title that I deemed appropriate for this was Evolution of Anarchism. Now, there are no right or wrong ways to go about this, as long as you're able to persuade the examiner or the reader that yes, you have really, what your understanding of it really does make sense. So, the title is what I gave, Evolution of Anarchism. Now I have characterized and I have compartmentalized what this paragraph stands out for me. And my compartment, the one that I'm going to put everything into, is evolution of anarchism, or what is the origin of anarchism. Then I jotted down some key points for me to be able to identify what is important and what is something that we can do without in this particular paragraph. So these key pointers for me were anarchy, Greek for anarchia, contrary to authority. So, these are key points. This is something I'm writing in rough. Remember that. This is not something that you write in the actual paraphrasing or the Pressy Writing. So, the first key point is the origin of the term anarchy. Then, negative connotation till 1840. This seemed important to me because it was only after that people started to understand what anarchy or anarchist thought was all about in an objective and a rational manner as well, rather than just thinking that these are enemies of the state. They started understanding it, theorizing it, and why it happened was because Pierre Joseph Proudhon wrote about it. Now I know that because I googled him, so I know that he is a French philosopher, but his early work or what he stood for, and he's often known as father of anarchy, father of anarchist thought, father of anarchism. So I know a little bit about that, but that doesn't mean that I'll write about that. I don't need to add on to the word count, I need to reduce the word count. Okay, so this is also a very important point, that his political and social ideology, which was that organization without government is possible, that gave a new meaning to anarchist thought. And in the evolving political ideas, which were liberalism and socialism that came later, their ultimate projection was also anarchism. Ultimate projection is their eventual, what they thought would be the eventual uh, condition of the society, or what will be the eventual outcome of their ideology if everybody were to be liberalized, if everybody could live following socialist theory, then they would ultimately be an organization without the government. So it is possible, and that's like their ideal outcome. So this is how these thoughts also started getting connected with one another, and like anarchist thought can be related to their emphasis on one or the other of these, which means on either liberalism or socialism. So this is something, this practice I did before I started Pressy writing, and then this is the Pressy version. um, Anarchy comes from anarchia, comma, Greek for contrary to authority. Negatively used, so instead of derogatory, I'll use negatively. Negatively used until Pierre Joseph Proudhon, brackets 1840, which means that this is the year when it stopped being negative. When Joseph Proudhon argued that organization without government was possible, it became liberalist and socialist projection. So instead of writing the entire line that said evolving theories of liberalism and socialism and their ultimate projection, anarchist thought, anarchism, instead of repeating those terms again and again, I just mentioned them once and I sort of condensed the entire paragraph into approximately 30 words. And this is one third, approximately one third of this. So another thing that you can do when you're practicing and when you're trying to also do a word count. So not each and every word is counted by your examiner. They don't have that kind of time, and those kinds of softwares also. What they actually do is they will count the words in the first sentence and then multiply that word, that number with the number of sentences. So, for example, in this, the first sentence contains around 8 words and there are 11 sentences, so there are approximately 88 words. And similarly, in the Pressy version, the first sentence contains around 10 words and there are 3 sentences, so 10 into 3 is 30, so that's approximately 30 words. So they go with approximate number. So this is how you can also count your words, and always do count your words. Make sure that you are following the one third rule that we talked about in the beginning. So if you read this paragraph again, you will be able to say that what I have written in the Pressy version essentially covers the main idea behind that paragraph, which is to give a historical background or the evolution of what does the term anarchy mean and how the meaning has changed over the years, and what are the different political thoughts that you can relate anarchism with. That is it. So that paragraph was condensed into this. Now, I would urge all of you to also practice it on your own. Again, this is just a sample, just an example, and not the only way to do it. Maybe some of you can do it even better than this. Maybe you can condense the entire paragraph into one sentence. Who knows? So try it, do it, put your answers in the comment section, and let's learn and grow together. This is the only way. So what is your way forward? Some tips before we close today's session. There are, majority of you are here because you're preparing for judiciary exams, and all the very best for that. As you know, we've discussed that uh, Oliveboard does have a lot of good judiciary courses, but it's completely your choice whether or not you want to go for coaching or you want to do it on your own. Know yourself. Tomorrow we have another session where we're going to talk about what kind of mindset you should have if you are a judiciary aspirant, and how you can go about identifying what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what should your strategy look like. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But the core, the crux of it is that you should know yourself and know how you are going to upskill, because it's at the end of the day, it's all about improving your game, being better than you were yesterday. And judiciary is all about that mindset, that preparation, that you want to do better. You want to grow, you want to learn. And I said this to everybody that ultimately, yes, our goal is to become the judge and just crack those exams and do whatever we do best. But if you are just looking at it as a means to upskill by gaining new knowledge, learning something new and applying it in your daily life, and especially if you are in the legal field, then your knowledge of law will never go to waste. right? Whatever knowledge you've gained by reading the subjects, by understanding the language, by reading and writing, by everything else that you're doing, it will always help you in one way or another. So upskill, don't stop upskilling. There are a lot of ways to do that by doing short courses or long courses, by actually taking training programs, by attending workshops and webinars like the one that you're doing today. So upskill. Then peer learning is another great way. So how you can go about that is that you get in touch with people who are in your situation, people who are preparing for some exams, and they're trying to learn. Just be in their company, try to motivate them and try to get motivated and inspired by them, and share your knowledge with each other. So one of my closest friends, she always says this, that knowledge that does not travel shrivels. So share your knowledge, spread your knowledge, make sure that you're doing it generously and without any hoarding mentality. So just share your knowledge, and you'll be surprised, just in a normal decent conversation with a friend, you'll be learning so much. So don't underestimate the value of peer learning, and that is also something you get when you're all in the same situation, and maybe if you're in the same class, or maybe if you're in the same office, or in the same situation. And these days it's very difficult, but virtually we can connect with each other. So stay connected with each other and keep discussing, sharing what you're learning, writing about it, asking for feedback, and be open to getting the feedback. Then practice and persistence. There are no alternatives. There are no shortcuts. So keep practicing, keep being consistent. We'll discuss that in detail tomorrow. I know because of the situation and the turbulent times that we are in, not just in terms of coronavirus, but also it's in the north side. It's too cold and it's been raining every day. So there are a lot of weird things happening around us. But persistence and consistency is key. Your routine, your plan, your strategy, your friends, your determination to upskill and do something new, something better, is something that will always help you succeed. So don't underestimate the value of that. And I'm always rooting for you. Have a great weekend ahead. Please subscribe to this channel, and you can hit on the bell icon and make sure that you're getting notified every time a new live class happens. And since these are happening for free, I would urge you to take advantage of these sessions and also tell your friends about it, and take as much as you can out of it. And especially the one reason why we all urge you to come live is because that's the only way we can interact with each other. Otherwise, if you're watching it later, you can just put your queries in the comment section, but it gets difficult for me to reply in real time. And you can reach out to me in case of any additional queries or anything you'd like to discuss with me at Law Chakra by Sanya on the social media channels of LinkedIn, Instagram. You can reach out to me anywhere, anytime, and I would really respond as soon as I can and make sure I can help you as much as I can. So, thank you everybody, and have a great weekend. Bye.